This video is sponsored by indie rock band Slightly Killed. No music is truly original. It's basically next to impossible to not be at least in part inspired by the music that came before you, so therefore pretty much every song you ever hear is borrowing at least in part from the music that came before it. However, sometimes this influence begins to veer into the territory of plagiarism, and one songwriter who is perhaps a bit too liberal with his borrowing is Ed Sheeran. When you say pop song lawsuit, Ed Sheeran is perhaps one of the first artists that springs to mind. Perhaps Sheeran's most audacious act of plagiarism is his 2014 song Photograph.
So you can keep me inside the pocket of your ripped jeans, holding me closer till our eyes meet. You won't ever be alone. How did you find me? You came out of nowhere like lightning. It's kind of amazing how you found me through all the noise somehow.
As you can imagine, this led to a lawsuit in 2016, and in 2017 the case was settled out of court. However, sometimes when Sheeran is accused of plagiarism, the allegations are slightly more dubious. For example, in 2016, a lawsuit was filed that claimed that Sheeran's 2014 hit Thinking Out Loud had plagiarised Marvin Gaye's 1973 song Let's Get It On. These two songs do certainly sound alike. They both not only use a near identical chord progression, but they both play this progression with the exact same rhythm.
Take me into your loving arms. I've been really trying, baby, trying to hold back this feeling.
Sheeran himself was actually perhaps one of the first people to notice the similarity, when he actually medleyed the two songs together for live shows in 2014.
Let's get it on. Let's get it on.
However, even if these two songs do use the same chord progression and the same rhythm, that doesn't necessarily mean that Sheeran has plagiarised Marvin Gaye. Borrowing chords and rhythms from other songs is not generally considered to be plagiarism, because these are essential building blocks of music, much like shapes and colours are to painting. The chord progression from Let's Get It On is far from a rare progression anyway.
Why you? You have fun till the daddy takes the TV away. To the bright side of the road.
The melody of a song is ultimately the one element that can distinguish it from other songs, and therefore it's the melody that should be considered most closely when you're judging whether two songs are similar or not. In the case of Thinking Out Loud and Let's Get It On, the two melodies have some similarities, but ultimately the two melodies are different, distinct, and unique. As of 2020, the legal battle surrounding these two songs continues. However, in my opinion, it's pretty clear that Ed Sheeran is well within his rights to use this chord progression and this rhythm. Let's Get It On is hardly the first song to use these elements, and it won't be the last. In 2016, Ed Sheeran had a songwriting session with producer Steve Mack and songwriter Johnny McDade. And in this session, they managed to write 3 hit records: Shape of You, Strip That Down, and The Rest of Our Life. Let's start with Shape of You. The chorus hook of Shape of You borrows from TLC's song No Scrubs.
No, I don't want no scrub.
Girl, you know I want your love.
Sheeran not only admits that he lifted from No Scrubs here, but he says it was a completely intentional decision.
Because as we were writing it, I kind of knew I wanted it to be like a really sort of R&B type feel. And I was like, wouldn't it be cool if like we put like an interpolation of No Scrubs in it? So the bit that went, girl, you know I want your love, originally was, girl, you know I want your love.
As you can imagine, the writers of No Scrubs are credited on Shape of You. However, another artist who believes that they too should be credited on Shape of You is Sami. Switch claims that this segment of Shape of You is lifted from his song Oh Why. The two melodies are certainly similar and both use similar lyrics. However, I would say it's hard to judge whether this segment of melody is distinctive enough to claim ownership over. Melodically, the short hook is a typical climb up the minor pentatonic scale, and the lyric is about as generic as you can get. Let's move on to the second song. Strip That Down, which Sheeran wrote for ex-One Directioner Liam Payne, clearly borrows from It Wasn't Me by Shaggy.
You know I used to be one. People want me for one thing. That's not me. I'm not changing the way that But you got me on the counter. Wasn't it? Saw me kissing on the sofa. Wasn't it? I even had her in the shower. Wasn't it?
The songwriters of It Wasn't Me are credited as writers on Sheeran's song. However, in an odd quirk of copyright, because It Wasn't Me by Shaggy samples an earlier song, War's Smile Happy, the writers of Smile Happy are also credited, even though the element that was sampled doesn't actually appear in Sheeran's song. And the third song that Sheeran and co wrote that day was The Rest of Our Life, which was recorded by Faith Hill and Tim McGraw. The Rest of Our Life lifts various elements from the song When I Found You by Australian country singer Jasmine Ray. From the very first bar, you can hear the blatant similarities. This is the piano intro from The Rest of Our Life. And this is the piano intro from When I Found You. They are near identical. The verse melody of both songs are also quite similar. They may not be identical, but both melodies have very similar phrasing, rhythm, and contour.
Sitting with you in a dark room, warmed by a fireplace.
Today I held flowers and I dressed in white.
None of this is helped by the fact that both songs are in the same time signature, in the same key, in the same style, and have very similar lyrical themes. Jasmine Ray, Sean Carey, and Bo Golden, the writers of When I Found You, were actually made aware of the similarities between the two songs when a fan tweeted about it. They subsequently proceeded to raise a lawsuit, and the case was settled later that year. The details have not been disclosed, however it appears that the writers of When I Found You received an undisclosed sum of money in exchange for not receiving royalties or writing credit. The last example we'll look at today is Ed Sheeran's song Don't, which clearly lifts from Lucy Pearl's 2000 hit Don't Mess With My Man. This once again appears to be a completely intentional sampling by Sheeran. Like I said at the beginning, all songwriters to varying degrees will borrow from previous songs, sometimes intentionally and sometimes not. But to Ed Sheeran, it seems to be a core tool in his songwriting arsenal. He seems to have no problems with borrowing from previous songs to build his own music. And of course he has to sacrifice royalties for this and face legal issues. However, if it allows him to continue writing an endless stream of pop singles, then perhaps it's worth it. I'm sure there's other Ed Sheeran songs out there that feature plagiarism that I've not covered in this video, so if you can think of any other examples, then do put them in the comments down below. And thank you to the sponsor of this video, Slightly Killed. Slightly Killed are an indie rock band from Russia. Their sound is reminiscent of Wolf Alice, but with an obvious influence from Radiohead. Slightly Killed have actually recorded at Courtyard Studios in the UK, where Radiohead recorded some of their early material. And they also supported Garbage in Moscow back in 2016. Have a listen to their song Queen of the Misfits. And here's their latest single, Don't Stop. You can find Slightly Killed on streaming services like Spotify, or subscribe to their YouTube channel that I've linked below. Thanks very much. And as always, a massive thank you goes to everybody who supports me on Patreon, including Adam Granger, Andre Steins Diaja, Andrew Brown, Andy Deacon, Austin Barrett, Austin Russell, Bob McKinstry, Brittany Parker, Bruce Mount, Cameron Oliveira, Chris Cabell, Christopher Ryan, Kieran Bennon, Darren Harvey, D. David Lee Fish, David Defundifer, Dr. Darren Wicks, Eleanor Skorchenko, Esben Hansen, Eugene Leroy, Eyes, FD Hodor, Gilnamo Latona, James Kao, J.A. Kockensparger, Joe Watson, Jonas Soderstrom, Justin Vigor, Lavender Mint Rose, Meg Fellows, Melody Composers Squared, Michael Vivian, Nancy Gillard, Paul Miller, Paul Pazel, Peter Dunphy, Roger Clay, Sam Lynn, Steve Daly, Thomas Armstrong, Tim Beaker, Tim Payne, Toot, Vidad Flowers, and Vladimir Kodakov.